So hi everyone, I am Danielle. I work here at Find Skills with Jasmine. I particularly help clients get launched in Filevine when they first purchase the product and help optimize Filevine thereafter. So just to get started, we're going to talk about DocGens today. So feel free to put any questions in the chat, but I'll just kind of walk you through the process of how DocGens appear in the Filevine projects, and then we'll talk more about how to build them on the back end and go from there. So we have our sandbox open right now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So let's pick a project. We'll go into our famous personal injury project here. So just to kind of talk first about DocGens and how they work in projects in Filevine on the front end, the user side, you can pretty much put DocGen widgets, they're called, where you can generate DocGens or templates in Filevine in different sections, and they kind of work differently in different sections. So big picture, what is a DocGen? It is a template that you can build on the back end and then generate it in a project with certain codes that we'll get to in a little while that will pull specific data from that project into that document. When you generate it, it will be the most updated version at that time. Then you can manage the document thereafter in other ways. So in different sections, right here we have an example of a DocGen widget where we can select multiple templates. Our static sections on the left are, if you're familiar, you go to the section, it's basically a form, you enter the data once. Our static section DocGen widgets can pull all of the data from those sections, and in any other section, we can also pull the static section data. Once we get to a collection section, for example, our insurance section where we have that add an item widget, we start to run into a little bit of limitation with the data that we can pull. We can pull information from our insurance section, and because it's a collection section, the widget is within an item. So the widget in this item is going to pull the data from this item specifically. And in addition, you can pull any static information from our previous static sections that we spoke about. Kind of having that as background info on where we can place our DocGen widgets and generate those DocGens on the front end, let's kind of talk about how we can actually build those DocGens out to pull the data that we needed to. So I have a document up. This is an example of a welcome letter. It's pretty basic. Let me try and, you can see my screen, right? The document? Okay, perfect. So it's a pretty basic example of a welcome letter. We have some case-specific information. We have our client. We have our date of incident. We have our client again here. We have the date that we're running this letter, right? So today's date. We have some, I guess, staff information, who's on the case, who they can contact, etc. So if we're going to use this as an example, we would want to kind of pay attention to the things that we can pull from our project. And again, where that document is, placement again is important. Right now, this is a welcome letter, so likely it would be in the intake section, and you may not have an intake section, but you'll have something similar where maybe you pull in your data, or you enter your data when you first get a case. So we have this welcome letter widget down here at the bottom. So I'm going to use this as an example on how we can code this out. Before we code it out, there are a couple of things we need to do. So I'm going to duplicate this quick, and we're going to head to the back end, which is the advanced tools. So before we get into our DocGen setup to code that document, pull those codes, we have to make sure we have a widget first. Now we do here, but I want to just show you how you can do that just in case you don't have a widget, because that is the first step in the process. So in order to do that, you would have to go over to Customs Editor, where you would build out and edit your template. So you would pick your template that you're selecting and choosing to enter the put in the widget, and then you would select your section. And again, placement is important. So we're going to go ahead and do it in intake, and I'm going to do it all the way at the bottom, which if you just hit that, it will automatically go to the last row. So when you're creating your widget, it's not a field, it's your widget. So we're going to click over to widget, and we're going to choose one of these. So we have our doc generation and DocGen multi-template. I typically recommend doing the multi-template. The difference between the two, if you put doc generation, then you can only have one template on the back end. And you can't add any more. So even if you intend on just doing one template, maybe it's a simple one document and there's not really going to be other templates or examples. I still usually go with the DocGen multi-template. What do you think, Jasmine? That's typically what I prefer. Yeah.
Yeah, it just gives you some flexibility. That way, maybe right now you just have one, but down the line you may have additional. And if you select just one, you're kind of pigeonholed into only doing one. You'll have to create additional fields. Whereas if you do the multi-template, it gives you, again, that flexibility to do with what you need as Filevine continues to grow with you.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead with the DocGen multi-template. You would then name your widget prompt. If we're looking over here, that is going to be welcome letter in this situation. So I'm just going to do welcome letter 2. And then the widget selector will automatically be created for you. If you're familiar with Customs Editor, that is more where we're in right now, but just kind of continue on with that. For auto tags, you can have, with DocGen widgets, you can have a tag associated with any document that's generated in that widget, which is pretty nice. So if you're doing an intake document like welcome letter, maybe you want to put a tag intake on it. If it's in the discovery section, maybe you want to put a discovery tag on it. And then another nice thing is you can auto move it to a folder. So I don't think we have a structure set up here, but I'm going to show you what that looks like in our other template. So in addition to the tags, you can have it auto move to a folder. So again, when a document is generated here, it will auto move to whatever default folder that you select. So it has to be built into your default folder structure on the back end, but you can simply choose that folder. And again, it will automatically be filed in that folder. I'm going to head back over here. And then we can choose to have our DocGen widgets, just like any other fields, show based on certain factors. Maybe we only wanted to show if we are accepting the case, or if it's a certain type of case and you want to send a specific document, you can have it be contingent on those other fields. And then you would hit create. And at that point, you would have your widget where you need it to be, and we can move on to the next part. Then we'll head over to DocGen setup. Now that we have our widget set up, even though I didn't create it, but pretend I did, we would head over to DocGen setup. So we're going to choose our project type, our template again. And in this one, personal injury, where are we? Here we go. Sorry about that. And then we have our project section. So again, when I was speaking about placement before, this is one of the reasons why, because of the placement and where you have it, what section you have it in, those codes, because of the data that you can pull, are going to be different for each section that you place that widget in. So in our case, we have it in the intake section. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. If you had multiple widgets in that section, then you would see another drop down to choose that specific widget that we just created. But in the intake section, we only have that welcome letter widget. Now that we're here, we can go ahead and get our fields code list. This is what is active at the time that we can use to pull into this document. So this is kind of new, where they actually break it down to the sections and different categories of the fields that you can pull in. So if you see this list all fields up here, I'm just gonna pull that, that's what I'm used to. You'll see here that there are thousands of codes that you can pull into each document. We give that a second to generate, fully load. Okay, so if you look over here, I don't know if you can see it, but the little scrolling thing is extremely small because there are so many fields that we can pull in. But if you wanted to really get specific and just maybe see you know, your client information and you didn't really want to see all the other fields, you can go ahead and just click client and it will give you kind of that filtered list of codes specific to just the client.
And there are certain sections that are going to be the same or consistent, no matter which section you're pulling it from. And so you may already, if you've done enough DocGens, have memorized the code for client name, for instance. So you might not want to see that again. You've already typed it in. You kind of just need to see what's specific for this section. And so this is super helpful. It definitely has things run faster, especially if you have a ton of fields.
Yeah.
Pulling individual sections will make the system run a little bit faster.
Yeah. So I'm going to go over to the whole list just so we can see and pull all the codes together. So obviously you're not going to sit here and scroll through all of these. I feel like it's pretty large. Okay. You're not going to scroll through all of these. So we use the Control F feature, the find feature. And then what we're going to do here is basically go data point by data point that we want to pull, right? So there's some stuff here we can't pull. It's just based on the template, but every data point that we can pull, we want to get in. So first we have our date. So we'll switch over here. And I'll just kind of show you up at the top, we always see the to date fields. And you'll notice to the left, it's going to show you exactly how it's going to pull in. So here, if we want that long date, we want it spelled out, we're going to go ahead with this code here. If we wanted the slashes, the shorter date, we would go with this code here. It's at the top of the letter, so I'm going to choose this one here, and you can just copy it by hitting that little icon right there. It will turn green quickly, and that will let you know that you've copied that code. We'll come over here, and we will highlight the date that we want to place it in, and we'll just paste that right in. I'm not if you're familiar with kind of like merge fields codes, I'm not sure, but one thing you want to make sure you're doing when you're doing your DocGens is using correct like spacing and formatting. What you put, this code is going to translate to exactly what it's pulling. So you want to make sure the spacing, any comma that you need after it, that you go ahead and put that in the right place as if that data was pulling in instead. And I'll kind of show you what I mean in a second. So we have today long here, we have our enter, right? So now we have the client. So if we have the client name and we have their address, if we go over here and use the Control F feature, and we just put in client, you'll see that there are 43,000 fields, but we're not going to worry about that right now. It will highlight all of the client features here, and it is kind of categorized out, and that's what you'll see in that client list here. You'll see just that client information. So there are some codes we could pull. We could pull client full name, right? Because we do have the client's full name here. But when it comes to addresses, we do have a better code to pull. So let's just scroll down a little bit to here. You'll notice with the addresses, the phone numbers, the emails, there are up to 7. There are 8 options, because when we're in our projects and we look at our contact card, we can have up to 8 phone numbers, up to 8 email addresses, and up to 8 addresses. So every time you see like client address 8, that is pulling the 8th address that you put in the contact card. So if you hit add address and you did that, it's going to pull the 8th one. So one thing you want to keep in mind when using Filevine and entering data, especially in the contact card, is putting that main phone number, that main address that you plan to use for mailing, the main email address that you plan to use for any contact really as the first position. Because if you're putting the main phone number second, but you're pulling in the code in the document for the first phone number, you're going to have some discrepancies. So that is something to be mindful with DocGens. Our best practice is to typically always pull the first one and just, let the staff know that they should be always making sure that first phone number, email address, and address is the most appropriate one when contacting whatever contact you're putting in this case, the client. So we're going to go to client address 1. And we have a few options here. So we have client address 1, and this one right here is really just going to pull one line of the address. So the actual address, 123 State Street, comma, the city, comma, state, etc. Then we have it broken down into line 1, 2, city, state, zip. So you can pull those out individually. And then down here, we have a couple of block addresses, and this is available for any contact that you have in your system. So we have the client address 1 block, which is going to pull the name and the address just in the way that we want it. This is for the client, but also we have this client block with company info. And I think this is useful just to point out that if you're, referring to maybe defense counsel or opposing counsel, this will pull in the company info from here on any contact that you pull. So we'll pull their name, it will pull the company info, and then it will pull that address, which is useful for obviously letters and stuff like that. In this case, I'm just going to pull the client address 1 block, and it is useful to know that if there is no company information there, it just will be blank. It won't pull that info in because there is none. So I'm going to take this code, I'm going to highlight this, and I'm just going to paste that right in. And this will generate those 3 lines like it was just shown. If I do want a line in between this and my reline, I want to make sure I'm hitting enter because that will, make sure it's pushed down appropriately. Now we have your incident date on 1/1/2024. This is a short date. If we're keeping in line with what it says here, we will go here and select incident date. Now, incident date is a specific field that is different than a regular date field. So, for example, this date of intake field right here is just a regular Filevine date field, but the incident date is actually a different field. It's called the incident date field, and that's how it's built on the back end. And when you select that, it also mirrors in other sections as the incident date. So just mindful that when you are, building Filevine for your system, and if you are pulling stuff into DocGens and you're pulling in the actual date of loss, the incident date, no matter what it's called, if it's referring to the, incident date, you want to pull that incident date field. So let's find that.
And you'll just want to make sure that that's how your system is built. If you are one of our clients, you have the incident date field, but if you built it or somebody else built it, you may have used a general date field. You're obviously not able to tell based on the front end. So when you're inputting the dates, it looks like a standard date field, but you can check in the customs editor to see what type of field it is. That way, you know that your data is actually going to be pulling in.
Yeah, sorry, that's a really good point. Some firms may have used a regular date fields here instead of the incident date. So obviously, yes, make sure you are, doing it in line with your firm or company. Okay, let's go back over here. So you can see here when I go to incident date, it's under the incident category, and that is right here. So I'm just going to copy that and place this here. And with the date field, it's automatically going to pull in exactly how it appears in Filevine, which is with those slashes, right? If we look at the date field here, it has a 1/. That's how it's going to pull in. Unless we change that, which I'll show you in a second. So now we have our dear line. So dear Miss Jane Doe, if we're looking at the contact card, we have a prefix here. So we want to pull in this code plus our first and last name. So let's go over here and we'll go back to our client information.
And for DocGens, you're going to get as good of information as you put into Filevine. So you want to make sure that if you have something like a prefix and you're adding a period, that you're not adding a period to the template and vice versa. Or some folks use the salutation line to do the Mr. or Mrs. So you just want to make sure that your, some folks don't have salutation. It just really depends. But you want to make sure that everybody at your firm is consistent in where they're putting that information, or they know where to put that information in. Because if they put it in salutation and you're pulling the prefix code, it's not going to pull in. So just a few notes there.
Yeah, that's actually really important because I've seen it both ways where people don't put the period and then it obviously messes up the DocGens if you're not putting that in a template. So we have prefix here. I'm going to pull that. And as you can see in our sandbox, we do include the period. So I'm not going to put the period in the template. You'll see here, and this is kind of what I was referencing before, that right now there's no space in between here and the first name. We want to make sure we are putting that space there because how you build it in the document is exactly how it's going to generate. So, and then the next we want to do is pull the client's full name. So I'm going to get that. Make sure our spacing is correct, and we only have one in between here. Perfect. Okay. Now we can move on. It was so nice to meet you at our office on date. So I imagine this is our intake date. So we'll go here, pull our intake date, which I think is date of intake. Perfect. Grab this and put this over here. And this is where we can kind of change the way that looks, right? This is in the context of the letter. Maybe we want to make that a long date where the date is actually spelled out. So I'm going to head down to the bottom of our very long list of codes. And you'll see down here that we have some modifiers. So we can kind of change how things are pulled in, right? Our first one, maybe we have a date field. These are our date modifiers. In this case, this is what we want to do. It's showing you over here the output. So based on what field you enter, what modifier you put in, you'll get a different output here. So we want this spelled out. So we can see here that we have the field name, we have this long line, and then we have long date. And one thing to be really mindful of is these are case sensitive. So if you see a capital, you want to make sure that in your code, it's the same thing. If you end up typing these out down the line, which as you code more documents, I'm sure you will, you can copy that. But what I prefer to do is just come here. We have our field name. We could do a space, that long line, and another space, and then we're just going to do long, capital D8, and then date. And that will extend that. We wanted to thank you for the opportunity to represent you in your motor vehicle accident. This is something we can pull. So this is going to be our incident type. And this is our template. It's just, again, this is something where it might be called something different in yours. In ours, it's incident type. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that over. Make sure we have a space. And then we have our date of incident again, which I can pull right from here. So I'm just going to copy that, throw that in there, but I want to also make it a long date. So I'm just going to add that line, get that in there. And then we want the address of the location, or however we have it in here, not current location of vehicle, location of incident. So I'm going to pull that one in. There we go. And this is another example of what Jasmine was speaking about earlier, where data and how you enter your data is going to really translate in your documents, right? So if you have your location of incident and you're not writing it the way you want it to appear on your letters here, you know, correct punctuation, grammar, you know, capitalization, etc. How you enter it here is exactly how it's going to pull into your document. So these are some things to kind of watch out for and have your staff properly enter the data into the project. And then finally, we have some team-specific information, right? So we have our paralegal, their email address, or attorney, email, phone number, and then down here we have some initials, which are typical of letters. So in our DocGens here, we can go ahead and look for our paralegal. Here we have legal assistant, but I'm going to go down to, sorry, it's a lot. Wow. Hang on a second. There we go. No, let's do this. Paralegal, wait. Oh, I guess it is. There it is. Okay, this is what I was looking for. So that's also another thing to be mindful of. The selector codes typically match your actual title of your widget, right? As we were here, when you create your widget prompts, your widget selector is automatically going to generate. But sometimes, depending on permissions, if you were to go in and maybe update that widget prompt name after creating it, that doesn't mean the widget selector is going to change. It doesn't change all the time, like you have to have certain permissions. So when you're searching for maybe a field that you want to pull into a document, the widget selector might be different. And so that's just something to be mindful of. You want to make sure you're looking at the actual code specifically, as well as the title or the widget prompt. So we're looking for the paralegal. So we have the paralegal's information here, and we're going to look for their full name. It's over here somewhere. There we go. And then the email address. Perfect. And you'll see here it pulls email 1 because we're going to put in the first email to make sure that's the correct one. Then we have our attorney, and we want to also look here and make sure that we are pulling the right attorney's information. So we have lead attorney and associate attorney. Think about if you do have multiple team members or multiple attorneys on a project, you want to make sure you're pulling the one that you typically want to see on that letter. So I'm going to go ahead with the lead attorney here. And you can just search it out. As you start to code more documents, you'll start to learn how things are kind of structured in the codes here. So I'm going to go with this one. I don't know if that copied, but we'll find out. Yep, perfect. And then we'll go with their phone number 1 here. This is another example of how you enter the data is exactly how it's going to appear. So highly recommend that when you're instructing your team that you don't enter it like this, because that is how it will pull into your document, that you enter it like this or with parentheses, however you want it to appear. But like this would not be super professional unless you're fine with that. And then we have email address. Here.
You know, I work with some firms that are maybe a little bit smaller. So they're like, we only ever have one attorney that's going to sign, or whose info is going to be kind of static. We still recommend changing the codes most of the time, just because if you do expand or grow, that's one less thing you have to worry about going back to change. So making sure that it's set and ready to go so that if you do expand, do get more attorneys that might be signing, you don't have to go through however many DocGens that you have and redo that bottom part.
Yeah. I also wanted to just show you that when I copied this, because the formatting that was in the document, it was an email, when I hit paste, it came through in a different font. So that's just an example of where you want to make sure you're putting the code exactly how you want it to translate, right? So we want to make sure this is Times New Roman. So we'll go back over here, make sure it's the right font size like the rest of them, and then we know we're good. So for these initials here, there's a few ways to deal with that. Sometimes I've seen it done in nickname. So for staff, you just instruct your team that you enter your initials in the nickname field, how you want it to pull into documents. So maybe if it's an attorney, it's going to be capitalized. If it's a paralegal, it will be lowercase because that's typically how it's done in letters. I've also seen it where there were initial fields in the details tab because the details tab of the contact card is customizable. So it really just depends on your team and how your Filevine system is set up. I'm going to go ahead with the nickname fields here though. Just pull that and then do a nickname. And we'll see that right here. And I just want to quickly talk about another modifier that's used often. So let's say everyone in your firm is just entering their initials like this, right? Instead of making them capitalized based on their, I guess, position, they're just putting them in lowercase. Or maybe you're not sure how they're entering it, but you want to make sure it comes in capitalized. There is another modifier at the bottom, other modifiers for different things. So right here, we have this capitalized modifier. So if we want the field, whatever it's going to generate to be capitalized, we can do that. If we want it title case or lowercase, we can do that just by adding these in here. So just to make sure that comes through correctly, I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. And then we can do for the paralegal as well. I'm spelling there wrong. Perfect. And then let's say we want to just make sure this is lowercase. I believe that is how it is spelled. How it's shown here. Because it's case sensitive, I want to make sure that it is exactly how it appears. Some other modifiers to just take a look at while I'm down here that I think are used often. So you can actually choose with numbers to select only certain numbers within that that number set, I guess. So where this is used often is when maybe you're doing something that requires the last four of the social security number. You have your X's, right? XXX, dash XX, and then dash, and you can pull the last four of that social. So the code for social security is typically the contact.ssn, and then you can put this modifier here. So this right, you type in right, and then that colon and the number of characters that you want on the right. So if we were looking for the right 4 characters, because that would be the last 4, we can use this code here to make that happen, and it would just pull in the last 4 if we did right colon and then the number 4. So that's another example of the modifiers down here. You can also get really technical and do some like conditionalities with these booleans down here at the bottom. So they're really useful in a lot of ways. If you want to just pull the month instead of the whole date, the day, the year, etc., you can go ahead and do that with these. Okay, so it looks like we have our document coded. Take a look, spacing's right, formatting is right. We're going to go ahead and save this. Now we can head over to our DocGen setup, back where we generated our codes, where we want to upload that document. So I'm going to go ahead and add this document in. So right now it's going to add it, and it's kind of like searching to make sure all the codes are correct. If there is a code that is incorrect, maybe it can't be added in this section that we're trying to put it in, or maybe the code is just incorrect in the way that it was entered on the document, it will let us know that, it will kind of give us an error code and let us know that it cannot be uploaded. It won't upload that document as well, so you're kind of safe from, you know, having documents generated on the front end that don't actually work. Once it is uploaded here, that means you're good. The codes were correct. So now that it's here, we can go ahead and try it on the front end. So I'm going to go over to our personal injury project here. I'm going to hit refresh so that it kind of accounts for the new document we added. And I'm also going to make sure, just so I can show you. Okay, perfect. That's there. And the paralegal is there. Okay. I think we have all the information in. I just want to make sure that everything pulls in that needs to. Okay. All right, so let's go for it. So I am going to go to the welcome letter widget. You'll now see that welcome letter test document that we just added. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to hit generate. And keep our fingers crossed. Okay, so we see that document here. I think it's a really good time to just note that you'll see these other documents here with DocGen widgets. As you generate them, they are saved here so that you can see them, and they are also saved in your documents section. It may be called something else in your system, but it will also be saved in your documents section. Also, if you have it going to a specific folder, which I don't know that we do, ours is intake, so it might be here. There it is. So we had it go auto move to the intake folder, so that's why we see it here. We also have those hashtags of intake documents and welcome. So that's why we see those hashtags associated with it, because that's what we did on the back end. So now we can go back to the intake section, or we could have viewed it where we just were. And I'm just going to open up that letter and we'll take a look. So when you first open up a letter, after you generate it, you're going to first see it in this window. This is the Filevine viewer window. So we can view it here, but we can't really make any edits to it. So a couple of things to note, you'll see here, this asterisk here. And if we go over here to our intake section, we'll see that that pulled in because it's actually a part of the incident type. In our templates, we use sometimes these symbols for conditionalities in the template. So certain things will show if it contains an asterisk. So it has that in it. You can easily take that out. Well, if you have any in your own, by editing the document on the front end. So we can't edit it here. To edit it, I'm just going to click this button right here to edit it. And you may get a pop-up that says like allow Windows access. I would select yes. And always, I'm going to bring this over here. Oh, I can't do that. Okay, so we have our document. Couple of things to note. You'll see at the top, it says welcome letter test with a date stamp. That is our document that we generated. And then there is a series of letters and numbers after our title. So that's the connector to Filevine. That's letting us know that any changes we make in this document right now and hit save will be reflected in that Filevine copy. So that's just one thing to note. So we can take a look, our address pulled in, we have our correct client address block, our incident, everything pulled in pretty nicely, except for this. So maybe we want to get rid of that asterisk. We can go ahead and just delete that out. This is one example of where if I missed a comma in the template, and I'll show you in a second how we can update the actual template. But here we can update it on our generated copy that is only going to take effect in this project on this document. So I put that comma there. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And our document is ready to go. I'm gonna X out of that and go back over to Filevine. I can X this out. So now if we go back to that document, now there's a little lock icon on it, meaning someone has it open. Sometimes it just takes Filevine a minute to catch up because I closed them out, but I'm just gonna refresh and that should come off.
If it doesn't come off, that means somebody is likely editing it. But you can see who's editing it. If you click that lock, it'll say this is open by. If it says null, that was likely you who exited out of it. And you can force unlock it. If you do go the force unlock route, know that if somebody else has it open and they're making edits, their edits won't be reflected if they haven't saved it in the document. And also the edits that Danielle made are only for this generation of the document. If she generates this document again, those changes are going to be reverted back to the original, and you'll have to like redo whatever edits you did.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pop open this one again so that we can just quickly see that it has the comma that I entered on this document, and it also has that asterisk removed. I'm gonna head over here now and just show you how I would update that template, right? So we know that we caught an error. I need that comma after the fact. So I'm gonna go back over to our DocGen setup where we uploaded that document to begin with, the template. And I'm just gonna double click this, kind of like we do on the user side. We're gonna be in the viewing window first, but we wanna edit it. So I'm gonna go over here and hit edit. Kind of works exactly the way it would on the front end, except any edits I make here are gonna be edits to the actual template and will be affected for any user that generates it in a project from that point forward. So we have the document and I just wanna make sure that, let's find it. So that occurred on our date. We want to make sure we have a comma there because that is the correct grammar. So we have that comma. I'm going to go ahead now and hit save. Again, we see that series of letters and numbers. That's our connector to Filevine. So we know any saves that we make, changes that we make will be reflected in that template copy. So I'm going to go ahead and X that out.
You are so brave for only pressing save once. I always do it multiple times. I get like PTSD or something from Word not saving my stuff.
I look when it says save to Mac. Oh, well, that's a good point. Because it says save to Mac already. Well, that's a good point, actually.
Even if it says save, I'm still like save a couple more times.
That's a good point. All right, so I'm going to X this out and let's go back over to the intake section and just make sure it did properly generate. I am going to refresh. We should do that anytime we're making changes on the back end that we want to see immediately on the front end. And now let's try it again. So we have that same template ready to go. I'm just going to hit regenerate. And I will click that open. And we have that comment after the fact. So now that we know that is corrected, that template is good to go and ready for use. Trying to think what else. There
are a few actionable items that you can do with your DocGens. That little caret or down arrow next to the document will give you a few, again, actionable items. You can download, preview, email, fax. You can edit the document from this instead of double clicking to open. Creating a share link will allow you to send this document a little bit more secure than just through an email. You can password protect it and also say, hey, folks can only have a day to view this document or 3 days to view it. You can kind of customize the amount of time that somebody has for that document. Sending it to VineSign if it needs to be signed off. Note, this is a really cool feature that I don't know if a lot of people know about, but it allows you to take whatever document you've generated or even ones that you've uploaded and put them into the activity feed so that if somebody else needs to look at it, they don't have to go searching through the doc section or through individual sections to try to find the document. I think that this is really helpful in collection section items because for each collection section item that you have, you could generate a document. If you're asking someone to go view it, they might not know which collection card you're wanting them to look at. And so this allows you to say, hey, this is the exact document I need you to look at. You can task them, you can mention them, you can just make it a note, whatever you'd like. And that document is in there. You'll see that little caret, same actionable items that we saw previously. Removing it will not remove it from the org, it just removes it from the activity feed.
Mhm.
You have the ability to add additional tags, move or copy the document, rename it. I did want to note that if you want to utilize, or if you're like, hey, for my welcome letter, I always have the client's name in the title, you can use those same replacement codes that Danielle used in the actual body to have in the title of your document, and it will generate from there. So if you wanted this to say like your client's name, welcome letter, you can just edit the title. If you click onto the actual document when you have multiple, you'll see some actionable items there. You can download, rename, replace, or throw in the trash. So you'll just use those replacement codes that, again, we saw on the other page, and then it will generate your client's name. I think that's also super awesome.
Yes, it is.
And then the only other like piece, I guess, as
Mhm.
Danielle mentioned, these get saved into the docs section. In the docs section, you have a few more actionable items than you would in the other two locations. You have the ability to make the document a PDF. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to catch up.
So the three little dots allow you to say, hey, I want this to be a PDF. I want to share this out with a guest. If you have guest users added in. And you can also add it to the sidebar. Sidebar is Filevine's like internal chat. So if you wanted to like quickly discuss a document, you maybe didn't have time to wait for that person to, look at their tasks and go through it, but the sidebar kind of pops up for them, or you are already having a conversation and you want that added in, you can go ahead and do that there. So you do have a couple of areas that you can kind of manipulate this document, make changes to, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. Also, one thing I wanted to just mention is this little eye over here to the right in the document section. One of the other options definitely shares a lot of information, so that it will kind of give the metadata of the document here. You can view the document without having to open it here. And then you can see your version history here, which I really kind of like, especially if you're working on documents on your desktop. Maybe you're writing a long motion, you don't want to work in Filevine, which we don't recommend, but if you do and you maybe have a new version of this welcome letter or motion protect, you can go ahead and hit upload new version, and it will take the place of this document while also preserving the previous versions, which you can see here. And then if you wanted to restore a previous version, you can go ahead and hit that clock, and then it will make the active version the previous one where maybe we didn't have that comma in and we had that asterisk in. Then here is another way that you can create that share link that Jasmine was talking about. And then if you have Docs Plus, you do have some other functions that you can do. You can bait stamp your documents, you can combine them. So if you select more than one, you can go ahead and combine those documents here, rearrange them, add new documents or a blank document. I found this useful here for like exhibit tabs. If you were, again, doing a motion or something like that and you wanted to add exhibit tabs, you can do that.
There's a question, Danielle.
Yeah.
How do I handle a letter I only use occasionally across all projects, such as withdrawal letters?
Yeah, so what I would do in a situation like that is if it's a withdrawal letter and you had somewhere in your sections where you're kind of noting that. So for example, maybe in your case summary section, you have a representation status and you have like withdrawal or something like that. I would have a contingent fields on if you are withdrawing that case. I would have that DocGen widget with a withdrawal letter there, so that it's not really seen unless you are actually withdrawing from that case. And then you can see those withdrawing documents, whether it's a letter or any other documents that you need to generate only in that situation. And then you would do the same thing where you're, you know, going here to the right section, you would see that, for example, if we had that widget in case summary, if we had a field that we are withdrawing and that DocGen widget was showing, we'd be able to select that widget specifically from here. Doesn't mean it's going to show up in every case. It will just be there when you're selecting that you are withdrawing from that case, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. Are there any other questions that we could answer for you all? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to repost the items in the chat because I'm not sure if they tracked. I know some folks maybe came in after I posted these. The links that I am posting are for our support plan. So if you are currently a member in Filevine and have already launched and you're looking to get some help post-launch, so things like DocGens, cleaning up sections, reports, really anything Filevine or Filevine product related, we could definitely help with that. I've added again in the chat a link to our support plans so that you all can check those out. I've also put a link to our free help link to our website. That way, if you all want to see the upcoming sessions, you can go and do that there. We also have a like survey if you'd like to fill out to give us topics for these sessions. We'd be more than happy to kind of take those in and work those in the schedule. And then, as you all know, we do record these each week. Our recordings are posted on our website, so you can look at past sessions. This session will also be posted for you all. So you and your team can kind of go and look at that if you need to. And the last thing is we will be at Lex. That's coming up quick. It's I think like 3 weeks or something like that, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But if you all are attending Lex, feel free to reach out to Danielle and myself. We'd love to see you all there. If you are like, hey, we really want to go to Lex, but it's a little expensive, we do have some discount codes we can send over to you to lower that price just a little bit. Again, feel free to email us and we can get that code sent over to you all. Did I miss anything, Danielle?
I don't think so, no.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you in a future free help session.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, Jess.